This is Peace Talks, the podcast that covers everything to do with competitive jigsaw puzzling. Aly Krasny is one of the co-founders of the USA Jigsaw Puzzle Association and a member of the Titanic team known as the Golden State Puzzlers. We talked about how a local puzzling competition got started in her house, how the USAJPA got started, and her experiences as part of the US Nationals competitions. Fair warning though, about halfway through the conversation we dive deep into her efforts to speedrun a puzzle and the lessons she learned along the way. Prepare to get nerdy. Aly Krasny, thank you for joining Peace Talks.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh man, I could not be more excited. I have more questions than I think we will possibly be able to fit into this time. So with that, I'm just going to jump right in. Have you
Cool.
always been interested in jigsaw puzzling?
I have been, not to this degree, uh, but yeah, when I was young, I used to puzzle with my family, but usually for like winter time, Christmas time, and then that would sort of be it for the year. But yeah, I've always really enjoyed them.
Have you always been a competitive person?
Yes, I didn't know that until I was like in my 20s.
Is that right?
I was playing softball with some coworkers and everyone was playing for fun and I realized that I wanted to win. And that was sort of the first time I realized how competitive I was.
Everybody else was drinking
Yeah,
beers and you were out there getting extra swings in.
exactly. I did not understand.
So there wasn't a time then in your early age where you were like, jigsaw puzzling, I'm going to compete with this.
No, so it's been like an interesting progression of how I got here. So yeah, when I was young, I used to just do it for fun with my family. They would say things like, "Oh, she's so good at puzzling," or "really fast," but they're also very like they like me a lot. So then they say really
That's nice.
nice things. And so I was just like, "Okay, guys, like calm down, thanks." And then it wasn't until 7 years ago or something. So again, I would do them during the holidays. And then about 7 years ago, I did one with a friend and he's big into board games. And so we'd play board games, but at one point we only had the two of us. And so I was like, I can bring a puzzle over. And he like never does them. They're not really his jam, but he was like, sure. And so we're doing it. And I was like, or I was just normal puzzling. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, you're so fast at this." And I was like, "Well, sure, compared to you, because you don't puzzle." So because of that, that was the first time that I ever considered competitively puzzling because he was like, he's a very competitive person and he'll turn anything into a competition. And so he was like, "We should have a competition and see how much faster you are than me." And I was like, "Does that sound fun to you?" Like he was preparing to lose, but he still wanted to
Oh,
do
so
it.
you were thinking, is this sound fun to you because you're going to lose?
Yeah. Well, because he thought he was going to like he was ready,
I
prepared.
see, I
He
see.
wanted to see how much he would lose by, and I was
Mhm.
like, "Okay." But he kept saying it to our friends. He kept telling them about it, and they were like, "I want to do that." He kept mentioning it, and I was like, "Fine, okay. Everyone come over to my house and we'll do it." I got Dollar Tree puzzles, so really good quality. There
Mhm.
were terrible false fits, but we did it and we had so much fun and I won. So I was like, I guess I am fairly fast. And that's where it was born.
How many folks were involved?
There were 8 of us, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe somewhere between 6 to 8. But like we didn't have the same tables. Someone brought a TV tray. It was rough.
And so what year was this about?
This was 2017, late 2016, early 2017,
Okay,
I
so
think.
fair to say you hadn't really heard of competitive jigsaw puzzling before you started doing competitive jigsaw puzzling.
Exactly, right. Yeah, no, I had never heard of it, but I enjoyed it. It was fun.
So tell me about
Yeah.
Pacific puzzling.
Yeah, so the transition from there kind of to the next step of my puzzling career is so we did that at my house a few more times with just a handful of friends and everyone liked it so much they wanted to do it more and their friends started wanting to do it so we said, "Okay, like let's just make this a thing. We'll go to the bar and the public can come and we'll charge, we'll make it a little side hustle and do it, do a bigger version of it. And so we started what we call Pacific Puzzlers. And so it was like bar trivia, but speed puzzling competitions instead. And that was, I think it was April 2018 that we did our first competition. And that one we sold out, which was really exciting. We had like 15 teams. And it's so wild to think back on that because at that time, there was very little competitive puzzling. I could find the Belgian competition. There's a 24 hours of puzzling in Belgium. There was the St. Paul Winter Carnival in Minnesota. I could find that. I think that was it. Even there wasn't even a world championship. There was nothing else I could find on the internet. We were like, we're kind of it. But it was happening in little pockets. But those were the things we could find.
So you started up this competition. Is it a competition?
Yes. Yeah. So it was teams of 4. And so we did it like once a month, teams of 4, up to like 15 or 20 teams. And we would kind of differentiate. We realized over time that there were some people who were there to drink and to do something. And then there were some people who were there to puzzle. So we were like, okay, that's awesome. Like we have these 2 sets of people, but they were in like pretty different brackets. The main competition was a 500-piece puzzle for 4 people. For teams of 4, but we introduced a 100-piece puzzle as kind of like the warm-up puzzle. So with that, we would say, oh, okay, the fastest people go in the like Jigsaw jocks division. And then the slower people go in the puzzles and chill division. But that was fun because then people could win in each division. So it wasn't like one team was winning all the time.
Did you choose the puzzles for all this? How did that puzzle choosing go?
Yeah, I was the main person choosing that. I kind of was the main person reaching out to the companies, and there were 3 of us running it. So it was myself, my friend Tony, who was the person who I originally puzzled with, and then one of my coworkers, his wife Lindsay. She was a strong puzzler when we did these at my house, and she's a very organized person. So the 3 of us formed this. And so we each kind of did different things, but choosing the puzzles was my thing. And back then we didn't really know like what was a good size of puzzle. I think we actually wanted to do 300 pieces more, but they're just not that many. But we had to really learn that, and like choosing images and brands and stuff. I really I did not know nearly as much about puzzles.
Right. For better or worse. So I promised you that we would get nerdy. So tell me what goes into selecting a good jigsaw puzzle. You've learned a ton. You've done a bunch of them. What is a good puzzle and what is a bad puzzle for speed puzzling?
Oh, good question. So ideally it's somewhat colorful, but it's not so colorful, so busy. So you don't want one color. You don't want,
All the colors.
37 colors. You want probably, I think around like 20 chunks of things, like somewhere between like 10 and 20 chunks of things is often good with a variety of colors. But it's tough to choose because sometimes you think, oh, this image will be great. And then the puzzle comes and the way that the pieces are split up, it does not translate.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Or sometimes the shading doesn't turn out the way you expect. So for the USA Jigsaw Nationals, the sushi puzzle
This year,
I think people were saying that it was like really dark and difficult. And when we looked at the picture originally, it was on the computer and it definitely wasn't that dark. So we didn't think it would be that difficult.
I did hear people say afterwards when they had a chance to bring it to their own sort of lighting situation that it's a sushi puzzle, but my recollection is there were like shelves or something in between. Oh, that's the different puzzle.
That's the plentiful
that one I
produce.
heard people say when they got it into their own lighting, it was much clearer. Yeah.
It was better. That's that's tough too, because like you can only have such good lighting in that space. But another example of one that was unexpectedly difficult. So there's the World Championships from 2020. one, I think, had London townhouses, and that one was like four or five, like townhouses in a row, and it was like a light pink and a dark pink and like a yellow and a white and a blue, and then just the street and a little bit of sky. And so that one seems like it should actually be like decently easy. And so many people like choked on that one, myself included, just was like, why is this so hard? So it's tough. It's tough
I
to
do feel
choose.
like every time I watch a puzzle competition, I see the organizers go, "Oh, okay. Well, I thought the other one was gonna be the easy one and this was gonna be the hard one."
Yeah, we did know though that for the Jigsaw Nationals that the blue mandala stones was going to be
Yeah, I heard the
difficult.
artist, and I forget her name, but she was, talking about how she, went through several iterations to try and make that puzzle into something that, could be reasonably competed with.
Yeah, yeah. So Elspeth McLean, she's wonderful. It was great meeting her there. And so when Ravensburger first showed us the puzzle, it was still in development, and there was a lot of blue, and I think we thought there was going to be a little more color filled in. And then, like, a while down the line, we're like, oh, they're showing us, oh, here's kind of the final product for all of these images, and that one was still exceptionally blue. And we were just like, oh no. But it's kind of good in a way because we don't want nationals to be so easy either. There it's like, I think puzzlers, we like a little bit of pain, for it to be enjoyable, right? It couldn't just be an easy puzzle, that would be
Right, and what's
crazy.
easy for one person is not easy for another person, and you have a
True.
variety of skill levels that go to nationals right now.
Right.
Circling back, how did you get from Pacific Puzzlers to US Jigsaw Puzzle Association?
So the story continues. So Pacific Puzzlers, I helped host for a little over a year. So during the actual competitions, Tony and Lindsay would kind of take the lead because I wanted to puzzle. So we would have me kind of like puzzle in the corner. Like we'd find a dark corner in a bar, which is basically no light. And, and then just put me over there because I still just wanted to compete, but, like, I couldn't win.
I
Mhm.
was gonna say you didn't get to know what the puzzle, or you chose the puzzles,
Yeah,
so you
yeah,
knew what
so
they
it's
were.
just yeah, yeah. But, yeah, I couldn't win, and we kinda wanted to hide me so it wouldn't kind of discourage people or make them, like, be like, "Oh, what's going on over there?" It was really just for fun for myself. And for, quite a while, I was undefeated, so that was kind of cool. But, yeah, so eventually, though, I realized I really just wanted puzzle, and at the time my life had gotten kind of busy and I wasn't enjoying like the hosting. It was a lot, and I think, Lindsay and Tony ideally would have been able to do more with it. Like I think they wanted to do more with it, and I was sort of like maxed out, and I was just like, why do you guys keep doing it, and I'll bow out and maybe I'll just compete. And so I think it was 2 months before the last one where I was officially one of the organizers, Tammy McLeod drove down from LA down to San Diego
Wow.
on like a Monday night to compete. And I actually wasn't there, but she talked to Lindsay and Tony, and Lindsay and Tony were like, "Hey, at the last one, there was this girl Tammy. She came down. You should really talk to her. She's really great. Like, she's really into this." And I was like, "That's cool." And I sort of brushed it off a little bit. I was like, "Sure, I'll see her at the next one," because the next one was the last one I was helping to host. But we did have an individual, because a lot of them were teams, but that one actually had an individual 300 piece, I think. And so at that one, I competed and Tammy was competing, and I beat Tammy on that one. And so she was like, "Oh, this girl," and because Tammy, as you know, is super duper
Right,
fast.
had she gotten the, Guinness Book yet?
No, no, actually, I'm going to take a little bit of credit. I told her about the
Uh-huh.
Guinness puzzles, so I basically helped her get that
You are the
number.
reason
She
she rocketed to notoriety.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, it wasn't the 2 years of practice that she did or anything. Yeah, yeah. No, so, she hadn't done that yet. And so then she kind of came and chatted with me and wanted to connect more, and she said, "Would you want to do the St. Paul Winter Carnival?" And at that point, I had like heard of it and seen it, and kind of it was like a little bit of a pipe dream. Like, I'll probably never go. It's in Minnesota, and I don't really know anyone else. That's speed puzzling. That's like super into it. And so when she said that, I was like, "Oh yeah, that would be awesome." And she knew Andrew Bradburn, who's semi-retired, but he used to do the competitions in like the 80s
Right.
and
Was those the
90s,
Hallmark
and
ones?
he's super fast. Yeah, yep. Yeah, so he came in like 3rd place in those or something like that, and he was fast. So she knew him, and then I knew Lindsay Steenstra, who's on the Golden State Puzzlers now. And so we got together and we practiced one weekend, and Tammy had gotten some of the puzzles from previous St. Paul Winter Carnivals, and we like beat all of the times, and we are like, "Oh, we might have a chance," but you never know, right? Depends on the puzzle, depends on the timing, depends on what teams show up. And so then we went and did the St. Paul Winter Carnival, and we came in first. And so we were super excited because we beat, I think there were like 240 teams between all the heats that
What year
year.
was this?
That was 20, yeah, January 2020.
Oh, okay.
And so then I think you know what happened next. Well, March
A little bit of a
that
global
year.
timeout.
Exactly. And so we had planned as a team to go to the World Championship, but because of COVID, obviously that was delayed indefinitely. And then in the meantime, though, we had all this extra time, and Tammy said, "Hey, technically to go to Worlds, we're supposed to have a national organization. I'm forming one." It's sort of like I think Alfonso knows that every country doesn't have that yet. So you can register if you don't have a national organization, but ideally you should have one. And so Tammy was like, "Do you want to help me form that?" And this was after I had done Pacific Puzzlers, and I was like, I don't know. I feel like I sort of just did that. But I went to a meeting, and at that time it was Tammy, Valerie Coit, Faith Taylor, and Jonathan Clough from speedpuzzling.com, and then myself.
This was all virtual because if
Mhm.
I recall, these people are
Yeah.
not all located in the same place.
No, and on purpose. Tammy did an amazing job of kind of try to find people like spread out all over. And somehow she like managed to find this amazing group of people, this amazing group of type A people, but like just the right blend. Because a lot of times you put too many type A people in the same room, like it might not always lead
True.
to good
Yeah.
things. But it was an amazing group of people. So I get in this meeting, and John, I think it was the second meeting they'd had, and Jonathan's like, "I'm working with the lawyer about the 501c3 paperwork," and Valerie was talking to USA or US Bank about getting a bank account set up, and everyone was doing like just warp
Wow. There
speed.
are businesses that didn't get
And
started up that fast.
I know. So it was just like, whoa, these people mean business and they are good. And I was like, I can't not be a part of this. And so that's how I got in there.
Was there a particular area in which you sort of took charge of?
Since I had done all the Pacific Puzzler events, I was sort of like, hey, I can help for like I think we originally called me event coordinator. That was sort of
Got
my
it.
title. Because I think originally we were trying to do more like virtual events, and then eventually like more, like, maybe even in like more in person events than we have been. But we kind of figured out that we need to handle it differently than us trying to host everything since we're just a handful of people. But yeah, that was sort of like the area where I came in, and I had a lot of the connections with the puzzle
Got it.
companies too.
When was the first nationals?
So the first nationals was October 2022. So
Okay.
we started and we did a bunch of virtual competitions. So we kind of got our feet wet doing that, but those are not nearly as fun.
Oh,
And so
shots fired,
then,
Jonathan.
yeah. Oh no, I don't mean that at all. Not as fun
I
to
see.
host. Yeah, because you don't get to hang out with people and everything like that. I'm sure Jonathan would agree that in person is
I mean,
the
he's doing a
most
fair
fun.
amount of them himself. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. He is doing so much now. It's amazing. It's incredible. But yeah, so October 2022 was the first nationals.
okay, so this most recent one was the second.
Yes, yep. Yeah, so the first one, so the reason the timing seems to have no reason to it is because the first world championship was, how did that work? 2023 world championship. We were trying to be in front of the world championship by like 4 or 5 months. And so October 2022 to June 2023, June was supposed to be worlds. But then it got pushed to September, I think. I can't remember.
I believe that's right.
There was something, worlds got moved from June to September, and that's part of why we pushed everything the way that we did. So originally we would have tried to do it either the next year or 2 years later.
How'd the first one go?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so great. Equally exhausting to this last one. It was incredible though. Everything like went off without a hitch. We couldn't have, like, we couldn't believe it when that weekend happened. And
Did you guys sell out for that first one? Attendance was pretty full.
no, it was pretty full. I can't remember. Were you there for the first one or just the second
Yeah,
one?
no, the first one we had
Okay.
heard about it the month before, and my wife and we were like, let's get on it.
Like, let's go.
Yeah, so I remember it seemed like the individuals were filled and the pairs were filled, but
Yes.
there were not full capacity teams.
Exactly. Yeah. So we filled individuals, pairs for the most part. There were maybe a few spots left open. Teams, we only filled like 30 out of 50 spots or something. Which is why for this next one, we kept teams at around 50 spots. We were like trying to double capacity. And so we're like, okay, well, the individuals sold out pretty quickly. So we were like, I think we tripled individuals, we doubled pairs, and teams were like, we'll just leave the same. And then sold out in 2 hours.
Yeah, so I kept hearing rumors about things.
Hmm.
We were
Oh,
part
tell
we
me.
were part of the people who were just refreshing until it came up, and then we hit yes on everything. Like we did all the stuff.
Nice.
So my recollection was that it sold out, like you said, in
Mhm.
about 2 hours. But maybe that was only
Yeah.
parts of it. And then I heard people say later that it sold out in 48 hours. And I'm like, where were you that you had like 46 other hours to do this? So was it just the teams that sold out that fast or the whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so teams sold out in 2 hours, and then pairs and individuals were sold out by 2 days, and then the
got it.
convention passes actually took quite a few months, I think, to sell out. People weren't quite sold on those at first, which I think maybe we should have marketed better, because then by the end, people are like, "Oh, no, I didn't get a convention pass." And we're like, "I don't know why not. They're so awesome."
Yeah, so I want to take a quick side here because I want you to sell
Mhm,
the convention pass because I've been there twice. I haven't got the convention pass.
mhm,
This last time I definitely had fear of missing out. So like give me
mhm.
yourself for what the convention pass is all about.
The convention pass. So I'll tell you the origin story of the convention pass and why the heck we had this to begin with. So when you book a hotel venue, you can either pay for just the space or you can pay for food. You can have a food and beverage minimum. Those prices are about the same.
Hmm.
So we're like, okay, well, we might as well get food out of it, because you get the space either way. So we're like, okay, food. And then we're like, well, who do we give the food to? Like, we had to like make sure we charged enough for everyone, and how do we handle this? So we're like, oh, convention pass, we'll do that. And then we were like, well, we should probably do more than just this, one meal. And so then we started getting some swag, and then the swag bags formed, and then the convention room. So everyone, so to pair this with selling it, so it comes with meals. For the last one, it came with 3 meals, right? And then it comes with a swag bag with all this stuff. And we managed to, the first year we got a donation from Artifact, so everyone got a wooden puzzle in their swag bag, and we
Nice.
were like, boom, that's pays for itself right
I
there.
was gonna say the first year I recall that the bag itself was everything, right? It paid for
Yeah,
the whole thing.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the first year was 50. This last year was 130, but that's because we added more stuff. So yeah, so it came with the swag bag, and then we were like, oh, well, the convention pass room is where people can practice, and we added a large format puzzle. So this year there was a 51,000 piece puzzle that you could take part in doing, which we finished somehow,
That's amazing.
which is I thought 100% we would not.
Right under
I
the
can't
line, though,
believe
right?
it. Yeah, yeah. It was incredible though. So there's a convention pass, there's meals, swag bag, convention pass room. There's the sprint puzzle competition, so extra competitions. There was the puzzle chess competition. There's the puzzle swap tables. There's seminars. There were like 12 seminars, which we added this year. Oh, there's raffles. This year we did 50 instead of like 150 the first year,
Still 50.
which was, yeah. And they were bundles. We probably actually could have done 150. But let me tell you, because that was my role, the logistics of that are a nightmare. Horrible. So I think those are some of the big things. There's more stuff. T-shirt, all kinds of stuff.
So sprint and puzzle chess were like
Mhm,
secondary activities. So tell me a little bit about
mhm.
sprint and puzzle chess, for especially for those folks who maybe aren't familiar with puzzle chess.
Sure, yeah. Sprints are really just a mini version of a speed puzzle competition. So it's 100, 200 pieces, just smaller size basically. So they're kind of like the sprinting of speed puzzling, and for for the convention we just did those casually. So you do it, it's on the honor system, and you put down your time, and it's just kind of fun extra competition. And then puzzle chess, that got popular the last few years. It was actually, I think, a Russian woman that that kind of came up with it. So I thought it was actually the Spain. I thought it was the World Jigsaw Puzzle Federation. But Alfonso, who runs that, confirmed it was actually I believe, a Russian woman that came up with it.
Hmm.
There was a Instagram video about it that went viral, has like millions of views. It's a head-to-head version of speed puzzling, right? So you have all of the edges assembled, and then you've got the rest of the pieces flipped over off to the side so you can equally grab from them. And then you have a chess clock, and you take turns putting a piece in, and then you hit your chess clock once you put a piece in, so that the time starts counting down for your opponent. So you want to go as fast as you can so that you have the most amount of time left at the end. And it's an interesting variation. A lot of speed puzzlers don't necessarily love it. Some really do, but it's a different level of stress.
Yeah, I was talking with Andrea Pang on the last episode, and I think she said that is
Hmm.
not her jam. Like, she likes to compete, but not like head to head.
Hmm. Whereas, like, I actually do really like it. It's very stressful, but I like it a lot.
You had actual, if I recall, like head to head brackets, and it was an
Yeah,
actual
a full
competition.
tournament
Yeah.
bracket. Hmm.
So do you
Hmm.
see this as becoming its own activity, or do you think it will be, at least for the near future, sort of secondary to speed puzzling directly?
Um, that's a good question. I know that
Did you get a lot of uptake?
yeah, people really liked it. We only had so many spots available, and we definitely had more people sign up than could do it.
Hmm.
And so I think people would love to do it more. I think for like the USAJPA, we can only host so much. So I think it'll always be like paired, and it'll be secondary to the main competitions. But I think it has the possibility to kind of become bigger, like have separate events just for that.
Is there any other kinds of puzzle competitions lurking out there on the fringes?
There is a really fun one that they do in Minnesota that Valerie can tell you more about. It involves eating a whole pizza, drinking a whole six pack, and completing a whole puzzle. I haven't gotten to try
I
that
love
one
that
yet, but
so
I want
much.
to.
So that would be
Okay.
going back to your bar puzzling days. That would be the chill folks,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We did do what we termed puzzle boot camp for Yvonne Foyt, for her 40th birthday. We had like, I don't know, 12 puzzlers get together in a cabin in Big Bear, in the mountains, where we literally didn't leave the cabin, didn't see the nature. And we just did puzzles nonstop. And I think it was like the Saturday night, we were trying to figure out how to make a drinking game out of puzzling. We couldn't quite figure that one out, but we'll keep working on
I have faith that there's a drinking game in there somewhere.
it. Yeah.
I have heard people say now multiple times that the U.S. Nationals competition is different from the world competition and that it is much more like a community and a convention, rather than like the world seems like, and I've not been, but it
Hmm.
seems I hear people
Hmm.
talk about it as sort of an event. You go there, you do the thing, you're done. So I'm
Right.
curious as to
Yeah.
how much of that was sort of intentional and how much of that is just you guys don't have the restraint to stop doing more things.
I mean, it's a lot the second. The amount of scope creep, and we do it to ourselves. We just like doing things. We just have to tell each other to stop. Honestly, I think we did originally intend it to be closer to Worlds, because so we went to Worlds. Oh, so that's what it was. I think we went to Worlds in June of 2022, and then had nationals in October. So we got to copy a good amount of stuff from World. So I should give like mad props to Alfonso from the World Jigsaw Puzzle Federation, because he put on such a great event that we just like copied a lot of it, because we were like, this was working. I think we would have had more elements of a convention, but because of that like convention pass meal situation, it really ballooned from there. But now we love that. And I think that's what so many people like about it, is it brings everyone together, to create so much more of a community. And I think that does happen at Worlds. People end up hanging out together and stuff like that, but when we have those shared spaces where it's kind of forcing people to interact more and stuff like that at nationals, that fosters that a little bit better, whereas Worlds is a little more just focused on the competition itself. But you never know, because Alfonso now has a lot more time to devote to it. And now that he saw what we were doing at nationals, I'll be curious to see if that sparked any ideas on his end. So
I'm going to back up just a little bit. You talked a little bit about how to select a puzzle, but how does the process begin? Because you
mhm.
mentioned that Ravensburger came to you with designs. So, what's the process for like getting in there? How far in advance do you have to
Mhm.
start? And then, what do you do with all of these puzzles? How do you receive them? How do you keep them? How do you get them in the right place?
You've seen some of my Instagram. You know what the puzzles in my house look like. No, so as far as the competition puzzles, it's been the process has been different both times, and part of that is because since this is really just becoming a thing, Ravensburger is kind of figuring out the best way to help make this happen. So Ravensburger, I should say, is the absolute most amazing sponsor in the entire world. We love them very, very much.
And the feeling seems to be
They
mutual. They seem to have a really good time.
Yeah, they do. And they just make it really easy for us. And so now that once they kind of figured out that unpublished puzzles are really important to these competitions, I think originally they were trying to kind of work around the release schedules of puzzles, which I think worked decently well for Worlds, because they're near Germany, where and the timing of things
Right.
getting released for Germany lined up for them. But North America has a different release schedule for things. So for the last nationals, we had unreleased puzzles, but they were unreleased in the US. So actually, there was actually one person who got their hands on one of the competition puzzles
Wow.
ahead of time, because they bought them from someone in Europe. And we were like, oh my gosh. And she actually was like, put it on a Facebook group. Oh, whoever wants this from me next. And I was like, me, I would like it, please. I was like, please
Defensive
don't pass
puzzle
it around the
acquisition.
community. So she had no idea, and she was going to give it to me at nationals, and she got to nationals, and she was like, "Oh, I see why you wanted this," and I was
That's
like,
awesome.
"Yeah." So she was great, but I digress. So originally, it was unreleased puzzles, just based on their normal schedule. But this time around, they oh, and then we had the custom puzzle for the individuals at last nationals. So that one was a custom Photoshop image. They have a so Adobe Photoshop has like stock images that you can choose from. So we chose that. That was the individual finals. So this time the individual prelims were all the custom or the stock images, and then the rest of them they had been like working with these artists, but kind of gearing it towards nationals. So I think they were already planning to work with them towards puzzles, but they specifically kind of geared it to nationals. So, and I think that's probably the way that we'll try to do things going forward. I think it worked well. But yeah, so because of that, then they sort of already had images in mind, things they had started working on. So it was sort of like, here's, the selection of what we're looking at. How do these work? And a little bit more of gearing them towards specific competitions and stuff like that. So, but they were really flexible for us to work on everything with. So.
And then did you have editorial say? I guess like things may not have hit exactly what you guys were hoping that they would. You might need adjustments. Did they take that into consideration and make adjustments, or is it kind of is what it was by the time you got it?
They were amenable to, if we were to say like an image, I can't remember from when we first started talking about it, if there were some other images we looked at. But if we were to say like this one totally won't work, then I think we would have figured something out. I think the nice fallback is always those like stock photos. So if something wasn't going to work for some reason, then we could always figure out an option there. And I think there was like a change in piece count for one of them based on some feedback that we had given. But for the most part, they were kind of developing them for their collection, but then they were kind of amenable to doing what we needed to do to make puzzles work for the competition, whatever that may be.
And did they manage the logistics of bringing the puzzles on site and moving them around, or how'd that work?
Yeah, actually it was amazing. So there's kind of two sets of shipments that were happening for nationals. So one set was all of the like swag bag stuff and the booth stuff and t-shirts and things like that. And then the other set was the puzzles. And so luckily they were able to ship those directly to the hotel. By the end of it, we had like an entire room, like an event room that was holding all of the puzzles. And so then Ravensburger went in there a few days beforehand and they sliced all the seals on all the puzzles and got them in the bags. And so they really did, kind of all of that. They handled that all. And so that, and because I think we also had to talk about, I don't know if you remember me announcing like the little colored sticker on the bags, all of that. They did everything. So that was huge. And I didn't have to have those in my house. Otherwise, I think my husband would have divorced me. So there's a lot of packages for a while.
Speaking of announcements, that reminds me, at some point you make an announcement, I think when people are sharing tables to be really careful, puzzle pieces getting swapped. I have a vague recollection that I've seen puzzle pieces migrate from one player's side of the table to the other side of the table. Like, are you giving those announcements because you have some history with that?
Yeah. Yep. So I heard you talk about that with Andrea, and I was like, there is a reason why we made that. And it did happen at nationals. I believe it was Jeffrey Scott, and I can't remember who was at his table with him, and that might be wrong. So I think he finished his puzzle, and then the person next to him had his last piece. So he got a 10-second penalty, though, because he didn't know until later on or whatever. Once we realized, though, that that's where the piece was, the discussion came up like, oh no, did he accidentally push it over there? And therefore the penalty would make sense? Or did she grab it on accident? And we don't know.
How would you know?
And we were like, we looked at the standings, and the 10 seconds did make a difference in their standings. And we're like, well, thank God it's the prelims. And he advanced. So we don't have to, like, it won't hurt anything, but oh man, this is on the lessons learned of what we need to work on for the future. So that was stressful.
How is emceeing the event? Because you've done it now both years. For a person who just likes to be in the corner puzzling, you're out in front a lot.
Oh, I love being, I love it. I do. It's really fun. So I'm really glad that the others are happy letting me do it. Because I love being the center of attention. I don't know if I should admit that on a recording, but no, I just like the energy of it, and it doesn't, for better or worse, maybe it should, doesn't really make me nervous to be up there. And I like, kind of getting people amped up, and I think I'm funny, make jokes. But no, it was really fun. But last time I was wearing yoga pants and barely alive from all the planning and looked maybe not my best. And then this year I was like, well, I gotta step it up a notch. Like the MC is supposed to look nice.
My note here for this portion is fashion.
Yeah. So I was like, I gotta get my puzzle fashion on. And so I did make like an effort, a strong effort to find not just kind of the typical, there's not so much puzzle fashion out there, surprising. Uh,
Oh,
but what there is a little bit stereotypical. So I was trying to find some unique things. So the first day I wore the pants from the Puzzle Republic, which was fun. Those were great. And then I found like,
they were basically
Mhm.
just big jigsaw puzzle pieces.
Yeah, yeah, that was amazing. They actually like donated some items to us because I was like, oh, it'd be kind of fun to have some puzzly stuff. Would you want us to wear anything? And they're like, sure. And so that was fun to have those. And then the next day, I had like a puzzle, like I don't know, like tunic or something. And that was something I found on Etsy. There's someone who has just like a fair amount of puzzle stuff on their Etsy store, but paired with like completely different stuff. And so I bought it and they wrote like, oh, what did you purchase this for? And I was like, oh, the Jigsaw Nationals. You should probably check that out. You should probably
Yeah, it
know.
might be relevant.
You might be excited about it. And then, yeah, that puzzle dress the last day was a custom dress. And I
I
found
feel
that
like there's
on,
a story here.
well, I had been like trying to find a cute puzzle dress because there were a few that looked like I was like a 70-year-old teacher. And I was like, can I find something a little more fashionable? And then I was like, maybe I can make like a custom one somehow. And I found this website called Printful, and you can like upload your own images, but like I don't know how to make a dress look good. But they have like a program on there that helps you kind of design it. So I was like, I have the Nationals logo, and they're like, do you want to repeat it and have it look like this? And I was like, cool. And then it was $25. So I was like, if
Oh
it
man,
is terrible, then that's a lunch nowadays. But it turned out well. I was really excited.
yeah, that's awesome. They were definitely statement pieces, and I did
Thank
notice
you.
that the first year you
Mhm.
did seem very instructive, and this time it seemed like you were just having a great time.
It was so fun. It was, especially once we hit like I was I was pretty tired. The first day I had like adrenaline. The second day, halfway through the day, I actually got like very exhausted. Like I had to go like I got a little bit nervous that I was gonna like, I don't know. I felt a little shaky and I was like, I need to just announce this and go rest for a little bit. But then once we got to teams, like everyone's energy was like huge because it was the end of the day, almost done with stuff. There's so many people in the room, and that was so fun. And the last day was super fun too, obviously, because everyone's just so stoked to,
Were
do
you
fun
exhausted
things.
by the end of that, or were you still
Yes.
going?
Actually, I think by then I wasn't as exhausted because we were sort of on like the downhill. It was really like more exciting then because we like the finals are coming up, we're almost done, we're making it through. And so that day was really fun. It was the second day, like the first half of the second day where it was that got to be a little like the end of day one. So the first nationals was a Saturday and a Sunday, and this nationals was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So last nationals after the first day, it was like, okay, I just have like a half day left basically. And this year after the first day, it was like, oh my god, there are 2 more days. So I was a little tired, but it was worth it.
Which leads me into the last question in this area that I
Mhm.
have, which is where does USAJPA go from here, especially nationals? So it seems like there is not a decrease in interest.
Yeah.
Um, so do you have already thoughts for what might happen next year?
Yeah, so that's like the $1 million question. So it took us about a month to recover from this year's. So we're sort of like we don't have it in us to do the same thing a year from now. So we're talking about what might it look like. I think it's fair to say we want to do something next year. And so we're figuring out what that would look like. We've talked about that we have the bandwidth to do the full thing, maybe every 2 years, competitions and conventions. So do we maybe not do the convention portion every year, or do we do something on a smaller scale? But we're also finding more resources. There are some kind of things in talks about, if we did do it every year, how would we make that happen and things like that. So it's still a little bit up in the air. We're still kind of, now that we've spent the last month or so recovering, now we're starting to dive in. We really kind of want to take this next year to focus on helping the organization grow in the right direction. So we have a lot of people asking us about state organizations and other types of affiliate. And so we want to put some structure to that, because we want that to happen. And we want to give people lots of freedom to make it what they want it to be, but also make sure that it sort of aligns if we're going to align ourselves with those organizations. And then there's a lot of talk about sanctioned events. People kind of want to have our stamp of approval on their event. And so what does that look like? And what would we require and things like that? And then structuring kind of the board, because I think that Tammy, one of our 4 board members, retired. And so, who do we bring on the board? How do we structure things? We're going to bring on more volunteers and stuff like that. So we want to make sure that we structure that sustainably, and also are giving benefits to these people who are spending so much time helping out with all of this. And so I think at the end of that list is also figuring out like nationals and what that'll look like going forward. And I think we still have a few more years of variety to what it might look like before we kind of nail down more of a formula of this is what it might look like every time. So we know that we do know though that we definitely need a bigger space. We're very aware. So that there's enough room so people aren't getting their tables bumped and things like that. So definitely more space. I think we're pretty aligned on wanting to have it travel a bit. So I don't think it'll be in San Diego next time. Making no commitments to any of this stuff.
Writing this down.
Yeah. Don't hold me to it. And we really love the convention portion of it. So figuring out, we can tease that out more. So there's a lot more to do with it. And so we're happy to grow it. And we're just figuring out the best way to do that.
Do you think that if Jigsaw puzzling continues sort of at the pace that it is, you'll end up doing things like regional qualifiers or?
Yeah, that's a good question. Personally, I won't speak for the board, and definitely not in an official capacity, but I think that does make sense. So I think, so we currently reserve we collaborate a lot with Jonathan. So Jonathan from speedypuzzling.com used to be part of the board, and then he branched off because he really wanted to focus on hosting the competitions, and he really wants it to be his full-time job. And so we aligned ourselves with him though, because we're like, cool, you host all of these, we'll people can compete through you, and then we'll just do the big stuff, and
Well, he's actively setting up a system of qualifiers and regional competitions.
Yes. He reached out to us about, hey, if I do these kind of regionals or states, can they have reserved spots in nationals? And we said, oh, that's great, because that way it's capturing some of the fastest people around. And so right now it's a little looser, and you don't have to qualify through that. But I think eventually there will be kind of a max, and we want to make sure to capture the fastest people for the national championship. So, it may run into that at some point where you have to be kind of qualifying through a smaller competition of sorts. And that's part of why we want to figure out what do state boards look like, what do sanctioned events look like. I actually this is pretty hilarious, but I have a friend or an acquaintance that she was an Olympic rower. And so I reached out to her recently and I said, hey, what did it look like when you had to qualify? I'm just trying to use any framework I can to kind of understand what that looks like. So I do think we want to capture the newer puzzlers and stuff too, because there's some people that come to nationals and they're like, this is my first one. And we want to capture those people. Whether or not we capture them in the like main national championship competition might be a question. Maybe there's, a more casual division at nationals, like part of the convention or things like that. Or maybe, maybe we save spots for newbies because we have dark horses like Alice Rowe, the winner, who showed up, and we might
This
have
was
a
her first
partner
live
otherwise.
one, yeah?
Hmm. Yeah. So, so maybe we have some spots left open. So there's a lot to still figure out there, but I think that's definitely possible.
All right. I'm going to shift gears because
Hmm.
all of this is well and good, but I want
Hmm.
to get to the stuff I really want to talk about, the hard hitting. Let's get nerdy and deep. Tell
Hmm.
me what it is you do for a living.
I'm a scientist, a research scientist. So my company makes therapeutics for blood cancers and other types of cancers.
And what kinds of things does a research scientist do day to day?
So we work at the bench and we produce data from experiments that we're running. And then I have to put all of that data together in things like graphs and charts and things like that. And I need to measure, different variables and compare those to each other and see how that affects the answer of the experiment that I'm running.
So, with that in mind, what is speed running?
So speed running, this idea stemmed out of video game speed running, if you're familiar with that. So that'll be people who do like, Super Mario, who play Super Mario and they try to get through the level as fast as they can. And there are leaderboards for this, down to the point, tenths of seconds and hundreds of seconds. And so this popped up, I think a little bit through conversation with my husband, because he's a big gamer. And so we sort of sometimes talk about like puzzles versus gaming and stuff. And so I can't remember if it was through that and what all, but the idea popped up of, what if you do the same puzzle over and over again? And so this idea was born, let's create this USAJPA competition is where it started, of this specific puzzle. Everyone get this puzzle and do it as many times as you want to and see who can do it the absolute fastest.
So, this was an official USA JPA event. Event's not the right thing, but a
Competition. Yeah.
sanctioned kind of
Yeah.
competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had our design contest puzzle from a few years ago. So we had a design contest and we had a winner of that. And we decided I think in order to kind of make it special and give it its own little thing more than just like, hey, this is a cool design, we said, let's make it this speed running puzzle. So it says kind of specifically on the puzzle, this is the USAJPA speed run. Go to this website to log in your results and you can do it as many times as you want to. And so we kind of tried to announce that to everyone and push everyone towards doing this puzzle as many times as they could.
And the art was from an actual other
It
puzzler.
is, yeah. It's Robin DeCare, who is the nicest person that you could hope to meet, and she does something art related. I think for work, we always have a variety of entries, and one of them was something that was blurry. One of them had some interesting exposure. There were some really, cool things that maybe just weren't great puzzles. And then Robin, so we were like, oh, I don't know. And then we got Robin's submission and we are like, well, this is a slam dunk because it was just super cute, called Intentional Kindness. And on the picture is like, I should know the answer. I should know the number. I don't know, 8-ish little sections of doing a nice deed. So, knit something for your neighbor or, help babysit your friend's kids, things like that. So it was super cute. And
So this was kicked off during the first nationals.
yes.
I can't remember. I seem to
Yep.
yes. And then the window was open for how long?
So that was October 2022, and I think we did close it October 2023. We're still kind of trying to figure out what's the best time frame for that, and we were trying to kind of coincide it with nationals, but until we kind of know how frequently nationals is going to be and how far apart, we're still figuring that out. But the first one was a year, so this next one will also be at least a year.
Teaser for a
Yeah.
later question. This puzzle was a puzzle twist puzzle.
Yes.
So for folks who don't know, puzzle twist puzzles have a
Mm-hmm.
twist built into them. Generally speaking, the image is depending on the kind of puzzle, somewhat different in some
Mhm,
way
mhm.
than the image that's actually on the box, which makes it a little more challenging. Classically, or I guess notoriously used at the St.
Yep,
Paul
St. Paul Winter Carnival.
competition.
Yeah. Yeah, and we actually knew, so Tony is the owner of Puzzle Twist, and he's wonderful to work with, and Valerie knew him really well, and we love Ravensburger very much, but we're also happy to give other opportunities to other puzzle companies. And so she thought, oh, maybe we could do this image with him, because we wanted to have it be an image that people could easily kind of buy the puzzle on their own. We wouldn't have to like deal with shipping it to people and things like that. So really, kind of a puzzle that could stand on its own, so that a distributor could sell it, and people could either get it through USAJPA, or from elsewhere. And so he was just great to work with, and so we chose to work with him on it.
How did you approach this puzzle, and what did you do with it?
Valerie said this competition was one we could actually compete in. And so I wanted to
Oh yeah,
compete in it. And so I was like, okay, like I'm gonna go for it with this. It's a cool idea. Everyone else is getting faster than me around me, so I can't be fast in the main competitions now. So maybe I can be the fastest at the speed run. I wanted to stay relevant.
so you did the puzzle, I don't know, one or two times to start.
Hmm.
So you did it like once or twice, and you're like, I want to see how much I can improve,
Yeah.
and then it became a thing.
Yeah. So I did it. I absolutely pulled the chart up on my computer to look at. I did it once. I did it once in November of 2022, and then took like a little break, and then did it another time and took kind of a long break. And then I think that was when, did I get laid off from a job that at that point? I think that's true. Or I had a job transition. I think that's what it was. Something like that, where I had like a month of time. And so I started doing it every day, and sometimes multiple times a day, and really got into it. The kind of the It's a little bit addictive to see how much you can improve from time to time. And sometimes you can improve, sometimes you only improve a little bit, by a few seconds, or maybe even go up. But then the next time you improve by like minutes, and it's so exciting.
Right, because you started off with, I forget what your original time was, hour or
Hour and eight
something,
minutes.
um, and you shaved a fairly substantial amount off, I feel like, after the first time.
Yeah, I think I actually, I'm looking at it, and I think the first time, I think I shaved off like maybe 4 minutes or something like that. 4 or 5 minutes. The first time, I tend to do fairly well when I repeat a puzzle. Like Tammy will tell you, she generally will only gain like a minute or two, and
Mm,
I can sometimes gain like 10 minutes or something.
wow, so early on, there's a little boost right there,
Yeah,
right? It's like the
exactly.
like, I did it again, now I've got a whole bunch of
Yeah.
time. But you were able to shave a pretty substantial amount of time off of that. So, do you recall what your I mean, you have it in front of you. Where did you
Of
finally
course.
end up time-wise?
So I went from an hour, 8 minutes, and 57 seconds down to 26 minutes.
That is so incredible. It's such a huge
It's
jump.
so huge. It was crazy.
I don't know every single improvement you found along the
Yeah.
way.
So where to start? So the interesting thing about speed running is, the first 10-ish times you're making huge gains, and then it'll start to kind of plateau. And at that point you have to get a little more strategic. So you're going to make gains even once you plateau. You may go up and down a bit, but you'll eventually kind of make gains. But you do have to be a little bit more strategic about it if you really want to get down, because when you get kind of to that level of minutia of, if you I would run into things like my table. The table I was using, I had like a white piece of paper that I put on it, because it has like a fold in the middle. And so I have paper that I put on it. Oh, actually, I take that back. When I first started speedrunning, I was using our dining room table, which is clear. It's clear glass. And at some point I switched to a folding table, a 6-foot folding table, and I put paper on there and I got so much faster.
Is that right? So is that, like, I can imagine, like, glass is see-through, so it's got some problems.
hmm
Glass has a
hmm
different texture to it. So is it just a different part of the room?
I think because the pieces could stand out more easily against the white, whereas they kind of like blend in with the like wooden floor underneath the glass table. And so it just really made them kind of pop. But I did notice that the piece of paper, when it's fresh, so nerdy. I love it. When it's fresh,
Let's go.
sliding the pieces around, they don't slide as well. But after you do a
Mm.
handful of attempts on there, kind of the resistance is worn down a little bit on it, so you can slide a little bit better.
Nice. I mean, you're talking about exactly the kinds of things when people speedrun games they're looking for, right? Like, what's the little bit of edge that I can get? What's the glitch that I can
Right.
find that I can skip through
Yeah,
something
yeah, that's right.
unexpected? Yeah. So smoother pieces of paper, that's all in keeping. Is it correct to
Mhm,
say that, like, early on, sort of memorization and developing muscle memory was probably
mhm.
a big part of the early stage? At some point, you've sort of saturated
Right.
as much of that as you can do. What other kinds of things did you try?
I tried doing no edges. So typically I do edges first. So I flip and sort the edges out from all the pieces and do the edges first for most puzzles, unless it's a plain edge or something. And I thought, okay, why don't I try just flipping and just like assemble? Like I know where everything goes in this puzzle, so I should be able to just assemble, whatever and not worry about the edges.
How many times would you have done it roughly about at that point?
Um, oh, that's a good question. When did I try? I'm like, wait, let me just look at my when did I start trying no edges? Oh, it looks like only after like 5 or so times did I try no
Oh, okay.
edges, but my time was so much worse that I was like, "Okay, I'll do edges." But I didn't stop there because I was like, "Okay, it looks like I did maybe 10 or 15 more times before I tried no edges again." And I tried it a few times, and I'm always worse with no edges. I always kind of thought that in the past, but I have the data to show it now. I need the structure of like I need to know kind of my size of where things go. I really need that
Well, and size
structure.
is non-trivial. Like,
Mhm.
so often when we're putting a puzzle together, we're like, "Oh, I only have to work in a very small area,
Yeah.
not the big unbounded box that I thought
Yeah,
I had."
exactly. So all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, okay, well this must go here because there's literally no other room for it." Yeah,
So edges turns out to no edges turns out not to have been a fruitful area, but
mhm,
good research scientist, you explored it multiple times,
exactly. Yeah.
perhaps under different conditions
Mhm.
just to see. What else?
I kept track of kind of morning and evening, kind of the time of day. And so after work, especially, probably unsurprisingly, is much worse usually. So my like sweet spot is like 3 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon. That is when I would PR the most.
So not so much in the mornings either then.
I'm not a morning person, definitely not. Which I mean, I've tried it just to check because, like you said, I'm a scientist. I gotta, you
Mhm.
know, make sure the data agrees with that. But yeah, like mid afternoon.
How destroying of a revelation would it have been if you discovered that you're really a PR at 5 in the morning
5 in
sort
the
of person?
morning. Oh man, it would have been fine. I'm so competitive. I'd be like, I'll get up. It's fine. I also tried. I didn't really try. It more so happened that I've tried, quote unquote, a few times. What happens after a glass of wine? Because what would happen is I would be like at home relaxing. I'm like, oh, I'll have a glass of wine. And then I'm like, oh, I really want to go do the speed run. And so I did it in my times with booze. There are some people at Pacific Puzzlers who are like, I'm much better after a beer. And that is not true for me. I'm minutes worse with a beer or wine or anything.
You are provably worse.
Exactly. I'm like, does not help me. No.
What else?
Um, I started. looking at different ways to flip and sort out my edges.
So you had one of my notes here is split times exclamation point.
Oh, yes.
So
Yeah.
you started splitting out the amount of time that it took you to do flip and sort,
Yep.
and then the time to assemble edges
Yep.
from the actual puzzle. So you're not looking at just the entire puzzle assembly. You've now got sections you
Mhm.
can optimize.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Like the flip and sort the edges out at the beginning. I'm like, I still think I could spend probably a bunch more time on that to really figure out like a really great like improvements, because I'm all about, if you're doing a process over and over again, how can you find these efficiencies? Like if you think about factories and stuff like that, they make things efficient down to the way that someone holds, this thing when they add this other thing to it. If you hold it
Right.
underhand versus kind of on the side, it's faster. So I'm all about what are those details.
So you had a flip and sort time that,
Hmm.
if I recall, you ended up getting it to the neighborhood of 3 minutes for a 500
Hmm.
piece puzzle.
Yep. Yeah.
And I personally, as a God, how do I say this correctly? Bottom ranked person, I aim for about 100 pieces a minute for a flip and sort.
Okay.
So you were pretty substantially faster than that.
Okay.
But you started out closer to me.
Hmm. Hmm.
What kinds of things drove that down for you?
For that, I used to do a technique that I kind of called like the rainbow, or I didn't call it, I should say Yvonne did, because Yvonne showed that to me, where once you dump out the pieces, you sort of make almost like a rainbow shape of them, and you are pulling out from the rainbow and like flipping and pulling the edge pieces in, I think. And so you kind of go around that way. You don't have to rearrange stuff a whole bunch. And so I was doing that. And at some point, I developed a little bit of a different strategy. So I dumped the pile out, I split it into two, and I kind of I go down the line, one of the two lines in front of me. So I start kind of at the top away from me, and I flip the edge pieces to either side of that pile. It sounds crazy, uh, but to either
To like
side,
both sides of one
to
pile?
both sides.
Oh,
So
okay.
one is sort of
That does
like
sound crazy.
ends up being in the middle because there's another line of pieces to the other side of that. So, but to the middle and outside of this line of pieces, that way I don't have to like stop to think about, oh, I need to put each edge piece in the middle. I just, whenever I have an edge piece, I set it aside essentially. Like I don't have to do as much work to move it somewhere, and so I can just get through that pile as quickly as possible. And then I kind of scooch those edge pieces all at once together. And then I go through the other line of pieces and I do the same thing. And then I scooch those edge pieces. So then I end up with all the edge pieces in the middle.
And just that shifting around made a difference.
Yeah, that made a big difference. Basically, trying to go with whatever my instincts are, trying to limit how much I have to go against them. I think I wasn't doing kind of the rainbow, and I started doing the rainbow, and I think that helped me get down. And then I started doing the, I don't know, split piles, whatever we want to call them,
Double
and
rainbow.
that, yeah, the double rainbow, exactly, and that got it down even further.
Were there other things that you did that helped you at that kind of getting started moment?
I think really just getting my brain focused. So I do this in general now. I don't know if I did it as much. I think I did it some then too. I have a Tabata timer. So it goes off like every 3 minutes. And so I know that the timer is going to come up at that 3 minutes, and I want to be like done with sorting and flipping the edges. So I am constantly saying to myself while I'm doing that, like, I got to get under 3 minutes, under 3 minutes. So that way my mind isn't like drifting. I'm just really like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
we got to keep going.
It's true because I find that if I'm not focused on the task of flipping and sorting, then I can slow down pretty substantially. Even if it's just
Hmm.
thinking about like, oh, I see colors, I should start thinking about sorting colors. Like if I'm not focused on
Hmm.
flipping and sorting, like I slow down pretty substantially.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's easy to do. I find my mind starting to drift, and I'm like, okay, under 3 minutes. I got to do under 3 minutes. And that helps.
I've been thinking about putting together a playlist where the songs are timed to hit certain
Oh,
moments.
yeah. Yeah,
It's like
absolutely.
I got a
Well,
3-minute song. Got to be done.
got to be done. Well, and so that's another thing I started doing is so the timer, maybe songs. Actually, I was going to say maybe songs would be better, but they wouldn't be for me because I'll start like singing the lyrics or kind of like it'll detract from my brain. So I have to I can't be music. I've learned that. I definitely go slower with music. It's just a very boring dead silence and then a beep every 3 minutes. Super fun. I don't know why people wouldn't want to do that. But so every 3 minutes, I'm trying to assemble a certain number of pieces too. So for a standard puzzle, like if it's the first time I'm doing it, like a 50, you have 500 pieces. If you're trying to do that in around 50 minutes, it's about 10 pieces a minute. And so if I have a 3 minute timer going, then it's kind of easy, I just try to count to 30 before the timer goes off.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. So you're
mhm,
that's great actually, because I was trying to think about how you could in real time keep track of your piece per minute,
mhm, mhm.
without having to do math.
Right.
Um, but counting is really easy because you're often doing that anyway,
Right.
and so you just wait for a beep and count.
Yeah, it feels kind of like a metronome where you're just um counting the pieces and like you don't care that much how accurate your number is, but it does help you kind of keep focused.
Right,
Um
and you can tell if you're slipping, from like,
exactly.
substantially, right? If you're, like,
Yeah.
25,
Hmm.
20,
Yeah, then it's
then
like,
you're
ooh,
at a
maybe
very
I
different
should do
place.
something different. Yeah.
How do you time your splits? Like, are you reaching over and hitting a timer?
For the speed run, let's see here. I think I a lot of times was recording, so I would take the number from there, or I think when I wasn't doing it for like prize or whatever like that, like when I knowing that these aren't going to be like my final times, I think sometimes I would maybe like pause, write the number, and unpause. But I think a lot of times I was taking it from videos. If I wasn't doing that though, I'd have pen and paper right there and just like write the number really fast.
Were there other things that helped you improve your overall time?
Yeah. So something I had to think about to try to optimize was if I grab, is how many pieces I'm grabbing. Am I putting them in my hand and puzzling out of my hand? Or, am I doing one piece here, one piece there? That's something I actually thought a fair amount about is like, what's the most efficient way to like gather the pieces I need to put in the puzzle? So I think I actually did try I think I tried like sorting the sections at one point. Like, what if I just like sort this and then I can smash those together super fast? But then that definitely wasn't fast for me, even though it feels lightning fast once you have the sections sorted. But I realized I needed to pick up whatever pieces were speaking to me and maybe around like 10 or 20, or I think I figured out I needed maybe 10ish pieces in my hand was maybe around a good amount, because more than that, then you're doing a lot more piece management and that's taking too much time, and less than that is you're going to like pick up pieces more and you can't focus as well. So I think it was like 10ish pieces in my hand at a time was good.
I love that you optimized to 10.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep. So that but yeah, that was actually kind of an interesting one, and again, I think still figuring out, optimizing it even further.
At some point, you were basically done. You called an end to the official, entry. Is that because, the time ended? Did the competition close? Were you just done with it? What
Hmm.
brought you to an end?
I hit that time. I'm trying to remember if it was I like held the record for quite a while.
Right, because I forget, you're in the middle of a competition. There are other
Mhm.
people submitting times? Is that how it goes? It's
Yeah.
like people submit times as they go?
Yeah, yep. So there's kind of like a leaderboard, and there was early on, Kevin Collins was doing it a lot. Someone named Kevin Collins. Kelly Spoon, she was always on my tail. Her and I were really kind of going back and forth. And I think Kim Kenny was doing it some too. But so Kelly and I, she was always sort of the one I was keeping my eye on, because I think Kevin stopped after he didn't go quite as long. And so I held the record for quite a while. I can't remember if it was that Kelly, I think she like beat me. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I think she beat me. And I was like, oh, this won't stand. So I had kind of taken a pause from it and sitting at that for time for a while. She beat me. And then I had to like get into it. So I think I spent like a week just doing it knowing that my times were going to be worse, which was not that fun because I had been kind of out of it for a little bit. Just I think I got busy and stuff. And then I went back to it, did it for a weekish, and I was like, oh, if I can't, if I can't break the record by the end of this week, I'm gonna have to stop because I needed to start getting ready for Worlds and practice like other puzzles that weren't the same one
Not
over
the
and over
same.
again. Exactly. So I was like, if I can't do it, that'll just be it. And I managed to like at the last day that I was trying to do it, I managed to get the 26 minutes, which was super exciting.
Again, that is just an amazing amount of time to have gotten through.
It's crazy. It was 19, just over 19 pieces per minute.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so fast.
It's crazy. But then Kelly at that, so I got that. I was like, okay, I feel good about this. I have to stop. I'm like calling it. I gotta get ready for Worlds. And then like
And
shortly
this was
after that,
about when?
it was, let me look. April. April. Okay. And
Okay.
Worlds was in September that year. Yeah.
I like that in April, you're like, "I gotta stop because I need to concentrate on Worlds in September."
Exactly.
I'm starting to understand a little bit about you.
Like really prepare. Also, in the meantime, my teammates were like, "Here's all the practice puzzles that we did, and now you have them." And I had just like stacks of them, and I was like, "I gotta get rid of these."
I interrupted you, though. You said, you'd submitted yours, and then it sounded like you were gonna say shortly thereafter.
Kelly got it.
Did she?
And I was like, son of a gun. And I was like, oh, I just have to be happy for her because I can't do anything about it now. And I thought she held the record for so long. I think we all thought she was going to get it. And then, like, in the 11th hour, Liz Nelson snuck in and she had been like doing it. And I know I hadn't been looking at the leaderboards and I don't think Kelly had been either. And Liz just like snuck in and took it. And she was, under 25 minutes, I think. I think it was
Dang.
24 something, if I'm not wrong.
How many times overall did you do that puzzle?
60 times.
60 times.
Hmm.
But I get the sense from what you were saying a minute ago, would do again.
Yeah, that puzzle or other speed runs.
I mean, you have done other speedruns,
Yeah.
so I feel like that is sort of a given.
Yeah.
But if you were left alone with this puzzle on a desert island, it feels like you could optimize that for days. Like you just keep going.
Well, if I were on a desert island, definitely. But at this point, I want to optimize with different one. I think I'm sort of like done with that image. I kind of like had my fill of it. And now I want to keep speed running, but and I want to keep optimizing, but with different images. So I did do, I think you mentioned I did another speed run, and it was actually my intention to do a third after Worlds. Um, but I ran out of time before nationals planning started. So
Mm.
because I had actually planned to take the world's final puzzle and I thought it would be kind of cool and I still might try to. So no one steal my idea. But
Nobody will hear this.
no,
Just you and me.
it's fine. But my idea was to watch video of Kristen Thuv. I don't know if that's how you say it. From Norway, because she's famously the puzzler who kind of the first year leaned on one arm and puzzled just one handed, and people thought she kind of looked like she was bored.
She destroyed it.
She killed it. Yeah, like I think it's funny to say if you watch her puzzle that first year, like I was watching her, I was like, ooh, I don't think this girl's that good at puzzling. Like she doesn't appear to be because she's stacking she kept the pieces in the box and she was pulling pieces out and putting them into sorted piles quite slowly it seemed, and then just like a pure genius, she like gets the box out of the way and just puts pieces exactly where they go, and she does it so not even fast. Her hands weren't moving that fast, but she still came
Yeah.
in second place, so she's just like amazing.
Right. I think you mentioned this along the way in
Mhm.
your because if people don't know, you posted all of the basically your notebook
Mhm,
on
mhm.
Instagram as you went with pictures of your adorable dog. So you mentioned things like trying Kristen's method
Yes.
along the way.
But Kristen's method, my thought was I wanted to take her method for for this next speed run. I wanted to take the world's puzzle and do it according to Kristen. And so I know that she changed her style somewhat this
She's using
year
both hands
using both hands, but I think she still
mostly.
does this sort. And so I wanted to watch video of her and really just try to recreate what she's done and speed run it that way and see what I could learn about optimizing in that form, I guess, and see if there's anything I could take from that and put into my kind of standard puzzling.
Yeah, I was doing a puzzle the other night. I had your version of doing Kristen's process in my head, and I was like, should I stop and try and just sort this right out of the box? No, I'm not ready for that. That is a bolder move that I'm ready for right now.
It's hard. I like because I did try it on. I'm pretty sure I tried it on the intentional kindness as well, and like there's definitely something to optimizing because it's like, okay, I've got all of this like memorized, so this should go, quick once I have the pieces. But there's something to optimizing how you sort them and what you do once you have those sorted piles. It's not as straightforward as it might seem.
A couple of quick questions on this that I want to get
Mhm.
before we move on. One is you mentioned that the cut of puzzle twist puzzles is tough for you. I think with respect to maybe flipping or something.
They're large pieces, so they take a little bit longer
I
to
see.
flip. The cut, I actually love random cut, but some of puzzle twist puzzles, the way the image is cut and kind of the way the random pieces fit together, it's not easy. I'm very much puzzle it as like there's that hole there. Let me find the piece that goes in that hole, and you can't do that very easily with puzzle twists because they often don't look the way that you expect. So
Mhm.
I've had to learn how to adjust to that.
At the end of doing this first round
Mhm.
of speed running, did you find that the stuff that you had learned along the way helped you in actually competing outside of doing the speed running? What
Yeah,
stuck?
right. I was like, Is this worth doing? What did I
I mean,
learn?"
it's fun. It's a fun
Right, right.
journey. So
Well, I liked it because since once you hit that plateau, you really start to understand what variables do make a difference. So I thought, yeah, I could learn something out of it. The caveat is that you do already know the image, so it's not totally apples to apples. Like this works best in the speed run, it might not always work best in a normal run. But it made me feel very confident about doing edges first is one thing for sure. Like I knew that that generally was important to me, but I just feel no shame about it now. I'm just like, I have to do them first. I go faster if I do them first. Don't abandon them because I feel like I'm going slow. Just do them and don't feel bad about it. So that was a big one. Um, and I think it made me have to think. I think once, as I was getting down to those really low times, something I had to really be focused on is thinking ahead. Like I'm going to put in this piece or that piece, but I need to be already looking around for the next piece.
right.
Really just kind of thinking multiple pieces ahead instead of just like, I have this one and I'm going to put it here and then I'll look for the next thing. So it helps me focus on that. And then same thing with like the pieces in hand, how many, what's the optimal way to do that? The edge sorting, that definitely applies to my standard puzzling. Um, yeah, there's quite a bit, which is good.
So you would recommend.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. And it was cool because so I did it again with the floral reflections puzzle from Ravensburger, and people started kind of doing it along with me. And Kim Kenny was one, and she said that so she was trying to do it and kind of keep up and beat me in. Then at Worlds, there was a puzzle that had tons of flowers, and she was saying she felt like that actually helped her. The speed running had helped her
Nice.
because just like getting used to dealing with stupid flowers and the ways to strategize through how to deal with that just mishmash of the same image, but a little bit different. Yeah, so it'd probably be even more beneficial to speed run something like the intentional kindness puzzle was definitely my strength. So speed running things that aren't my strength, I think would help me figure out more strategies to cope with similar puzzles. And so I think that would be true for others.
So what was the second puzzle that you went with? What was the goal there? Like, I feel like you had a pretty clear
Yeah,
objective.
yeah. So the floral reflections was one of the prelims puzzles used at Worlds 2022, maybe. So Alejandro had done it. I should know the time in like, I think it was 35 minutes or something like that. And I had done it in like, I want to say over an hour. And so I wanted to beat his time, basically. And I thought I should be able to do that. I got intentional kindness down to 26 minutes. I should be able to get down past I think maybe, I'm like, do you have it in your notes? Was it 30, 35, 32?
I had 31
Okay, that
something
might
in
be
my
right.
head, but
And I was like, oh, I should be able to do that. Like I had gotten with intentional kindness, I think I had improved my performance by that amount in like 10-ish tries or something. So I was like, oh, this will kind of be a short one, like no big deal. And I never beat his time.
well, there was an escape clause in there.
Well, how do you mean? The fact that I sort of beat him, but not really? Or
You were trying to beat his time at Worlds, but it turns out that was the second time he'd done
right.
that
Yeah.
puzzle.
He had done it once before. So I only knew his world's time. And then throughout the process of doing it, he like reached out. He's so great. He actually really kind of likes the speed running stuff. So it's really fun to touch base with him on that. And he said, actually, I did it once before. And I think it was maybe like 38 minutes or something like that the first time. And so I did manage to beat his original or his like original time, but it was so crazy to me how different this experience was for this second one. So the first one was this intentional kindness was like I said, sort of like 10-ish sections of little like cartoons. And the floral reflections is 6 different color sections of flowers. And so it's sort of like 6 mini puzzles, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. And so you'd think that would be easier, but there's something about that puzzle that does not translate the same. And what's cool is since other people started doing it, they were seeing the same thing. They were seeing the same like earlier plateau.
Really?
Yeah, which made me feel better. Yeah. But also was super interesting that so I don't think all speed runs are the same.
This feels like a research paper about to happen. Some sort of
Yes.
insights into how the brain
Hmm.
works by virtue of how you react to different puzzling.
Hmm. Yeah, my theory on that one is I do think that there's something to the fact that it is basically 6 small puzzles and you kind of feel stuck in, red and then orange, yellow. Like you feel like
I see.
it's not the same
Right.
as like, well, I have this piece of the like pig in a blanket and I can put that in and then I'll do this ostrich piece over here and you can kind of go back and forth. You don't do that the same with this like gradient like that. There you kind of are stuck with those 6 sections and there's not as much flexibility in the parts of the sections.
Right. So you're sort of stuck in 6 smaller boxes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's hard to really kind of pull out of that. So I that's sort of what I think might be part of what's going on.
Fascinating. All right. Well, I
Mhm.
look forward to the paper.
Yeah.
All right. We've got a short amount of time left, so I'm going to
Okay.
switch over to the speed round.
Okay.
The way this works is I'm just going to read off a bunch of things, and you give me, generally speaking, a one-word answer,
Mhm.
whatever hits your head. Gradients, patterns, or fur.
Patterns.
Illustration or photo.
Illustration.
Jumble or landscape.
Mm. Jumble.
Round or square.
Square.
Wood or cardboard.
For speed, cardboard. For enjoyment, wood.
All right. Individuals, pairs, or teams.
Ooh, individuals. I love you,
Vir-
team.
Virtual or in person.
In person.
Ribbon cut or random cut.
Random cut.
300, 500, or 1,000?
500. 300.
Mm.
For speed? Yeah.
What's your current favorite brand?
Oh, favorites are hard for me. I always love Ravensburger. Outside of Ravensburger, I just did a Unified Pieces one that's super cool. I like that brand.
I'm not familiar with that. I have to go look it up.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a really cool. It's all artists, different artists, and the pieces are kind of like velvety, and it comes in a beautiful box, and it's a small black owned business, and he was there at Nationals, Measy, and he's great. So yeah.
All right, I'll check it out. Do you have a favorite puzzle?
So we talked about this a little bit. I'm terrible with favorites, but there was one that actually popped to my mind because it blends some of multiple loves in my life. So there's the, oh shoot, I can't remember the actual brand. It's Dr. Livingston's like series. It's 7 puzzles, and each puzzle is a section of anatomy. And so there's the head and the 2 arms and the 2 legs, and then 3 parts of the abdomen. Was that 7? 2 parts of the abdomen. And you put them all together, and it stands 10 feet long, or
Dang.
it lays 10 feet long. And so with my love of science, and then how kind of just cool it is because it's so big, and I put it together and I laid out on it, and I had my dog with me on it. And so that's a really cool one to be able to show to people. And I like that one a lot.
Awesome. Where can people go to find out more about you?
Probably my Instagram is the best place. Puzzles and pups. Though I really only have one pup. Puzzles and pups. And there's a little bit more about me on the USA Jigsaw website as well.
Aly Krasny, thank you so much. This has been a delight.
Thank you so much. Thank you for letting me talk about puzzles for so long.
If you're interested in trying your hand at speedrunning a puzzle, the USAJPA kicked off their second speedrun competition at the 2024 Nationals. You can find more at usajigsaw.org/speed-puzzle or check the show notes. Thanks for listening to Peace Talks. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at peace_talks, and you can send email to peacetalkscast@gmail.com.